Hello, scholars. Welcome to another exciting history lesson. Today, we move away from the rulers of Elizabethan England, and we're going to look more specifically at another important, well-known person from the time of Elizabeth's rule as Queen of England. So, this is a look at William Shakespeare and the theater. Lesson 1 today's objectives. So we will learn about the early life of William Shakespeare, and we are going to also learn about the beginning of theater as entertainment in England. So William Shakespeare became a famous playwright during the reigns of Elizabeth I and James I, both of whom we learned about in our last lesson. We're going to back up now today and hear the story of how William Shakespeare came to be William Shakespeare. So it starts in the year 1569 when a company of traveling actors came to the little town in England called Stratford upon Avon. So a little town named Stratford right along the Avon River. As their cart rolled into town, the mayor met them and they did a special performance for him. If he liked the play, he would give them a license to present it to the public right there in Stratford. That mayor was John Shakespeare, a glove maker. He liked the play and he agreed to let them perform. It is believed that he may have had his son William with him at this special performance. Well, the actors unloaded their cart and laid out long boards to use as a stage. They hung a curtain behind it as a backdrop, and then they entertained the people of Stratford upon Avon with their play. It was a success, and from that point on, traveling players came almost every year to Stratford, and it was always a special event well received by the people. When William was 6 or 7, he entered grammar school. It was a good school for the time, and it was free, but only boys could attend. He learned to read and write, and as students got older, they studied Greek and Latin. They also memorized long passages of poetry. Hmm. Scholars, it sounds a lot like your work today, right? Learning to read and write. You're learning Latin. And at Nova, we memorize poetry. William graduated from school when he was 16. But by that time, the Shakespeare family had fallen on hard times. William's father, John, owed a lot of money. He could not pay his taxes, and he was no longer a leader in the town. There was no money for William to attend college, so he immediately went to work. Historians are not sure what he did for work, but many believe he went to work helping his father make gloves. Others think he was a schoolmaster's assistant or that he worked for a lawyer. Here are some things that we do know for certain. William Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway when he was 18 years old and she was 26. William's family was already short on money, but he and Anne moved in with the family, which included William's 3 brothers and 2 sisters. Not long later, William and Anne had a baby named Susanna, and then 2 years after that, Anne gave birth to twins, Hamnet, and Judith. That brought the total number of people in the house to 12 people. That's a lot of people in a house, especially if money is tight. Sometime after that, William left Stratford upon Avon. No one is really certain why, but he left there and headed to London, probably in search of work. It is believed that he sent money back for his family and at times came to visit them, but historians find it interesting to note that he never took his family to London to live with him. Meanwhile, in London, so scholars, we're going to backtrack for a moment and learn about the theater in London in the years that William Shakespeare was growing up. I promise we will get back to William Shakespeare a little bit later, but it's important to know what was going on in London related to theater at the same time that William was growing up. When Shakespeare was still a schoolboy, growing up in Stratford upon Avon, an actor named James Burbage put up a building near London designed just for the purpose of putting on plays. It was the first such building since the days of ancient Greece and Rome. He named the building the theater, and it meant that actors could perform in one place instead of traveling around to perform. If you take a quick look, scholars, at the picture, the top picture shows us a side view of a look into that theater. And then on the bottom left, where it says plan view, that would be the bird's eye or aerial view where you're looking down from above. And you can see the two big rings. That's a roof where the gallery seating is. You'll hear more about that in our next lesson. But I want you to notice the pit area. That pit area is the ground area. It was open, right? They had an open roof to it to let light in. And then the cross section view gives you a look at the area where the stage is and then a building. And they had space where they could lower things down from the heavens. And then up higher, a place where they could store things. One of the things in that storage space was a cannon that they would use for making the firing of cannon sounds. That's going to be important in a future lesson. The people of London loved to see plays, and the theater was a great success. Soon, other playhouses were built. First, the Curtain, then the Rose and the Swan, and later, a theater called the Fortune. Notice how all the theaters are located outside the city wall, which is shown there in red, right along the Thames River. The reason for this is that the Lord Mayor and City Council did not approve of playhouses. There were three main reasons for their disapproval. They believed it led to too much drinking by the people who were watching the plays. It encouraged pickpockets who could easily steal from the people because the theaters were quite crowded. It was very easy to bump into people or being pressed against them and easily sneak things from their purses. And they believed it spread sickness such as the plague, which again, because of how crowded it was, it would be very easy for people to get sick if a sick person was there attending. Those three reasons Make sure you're thinking about those. Too much drinking, it encouraged pickpockets, and it spread sickness. Those are three reasons why the Lord Mayor and City Council would not allow playhouses to be built inside the city walls. So, since playhouses were built outside the city wall, they needed a way to let people know that a play was going on. So, to let people in the city know that they were putting on a play, playhouses would raise a flag as a signal to the people. At the Globe Theater, which you are going to hear about in our next class session, three different flags were used to alert people of their performances. A raised white flag let the people know a comedy was being performed. A raised black flag told them the performance was of a tragedy. And a red flag signaled that a history was being performed. Scholars, I'm noticing right now that I need to fix a spot on our slideshow where it says a raised black flag meant the theater was performing a tragedy. That should say tragedy instead of comedy. William Shakespeare became famous for writing all three of these types of plays: comedies, tragedies, and histories. And now, dear scholars, we are going to lower the flag for today and continue with our history in the next class period. In our next period, you will learn more about the theater itself, the theater named the theater, and William Shakespeare's life once he arrived in London and began working at the theater. So, checking in on our objectives for today. We learned about the early life of William Shakespeare, growing up as a boy in Stratford upon Avon, getting married, and having 3 children. We'll hear much more about him and his life when he left Stratford and headed to London in our next class period. We also today learned about the beginning of theater as entertainment in England. And in our next class, we're going to dig a little deeper into that and learn much more about the theater named the theater. Your assignment for today, right? Open the attached Google form and answer those questions about today's lesson. Remember, scholars, think of it as a scavenger hunt. Right? Go back into the lesson, look at the slides, listen to this information again, dig around, right? Trying to find answers to the questions. And then remember, click submit at the bottom of the Google form. That's what sends those answers to your teacher. Good luck, scholars. Thank you for joining me. And remember, in our next class, we will continue our look at William Shakespeare and the theater.